The mayor of a town bursts into a room and screams at a couple of children to get out. Despite hearing their cries of pain, he still forcefully shoves them away. A nearby merchant offers him 5 silver coins, seemingly buying the 2 kids for himself. Although the mayor argues that it's too cheap, the dealer states that he isn't running a charity. He insists that they should be thankful, as others wouldn't even consider buying such products. Understanding their situation, he's left with no choice but to accept the deal and urges them to take the children away. The villagers look on in disgust, relieved to finally get rid of the evil god's servants. The ability of humans to use magic has already been questioned multiple times in the past. However, to this day, nobody has ever been able to give an answer. All they know are the incantations that have been passed down since ancient times and the power they bring forth to the world. Magic has been used to help people with their livelihoods, as well as to advance human civilization. On the other hand, it's also been utilized on numerous battlefields to take countless lives. Incantations echo in the middle of the forest, and a magician's staff glows in preparation for a spell. Right as he's about to release the magic, a blade sinks itself into the middle of his forehead. One might think that magic is powerful, but not almighty. The same can be said for its procedures, as its effects are already predetermined. For example, a sword sent flying forward would mercilessly end a person's life. While some might believe in this, most people would simply scoff at such beliefs. Retracting his blade from the magician's skull, a young man asks his pursuer who they are and why they attacked him. With his comrades dead, the lone survivor trembles at the question. Recognizing the sword magic being cast against them, he tries to run away as the blades are sent in his direction. From above, an assassin-like man, presumably part of the group, studies the situation. The report given to them did mention that their target uses sword magic, but they never realized that it was such a strong power. Calming down, he reminds himself that the enemy is just another sorcerer. Sure that he can win in a close-range fight, he leaps down with his blade at the ready. Without batting an eye, the young man blocks the assassin with his own weapon. With a terrifying glare, he points out how obvious the assassin is, with his bloodlust basically gushing out from his presence. Sure that he has the upper hand in a knife fight against a magician, he regains his footing and unleashes a series of stabs. However, he's left stunned as his opponent parries his sword out of his hands, making him wonder how a sorcerer could be that skilled. Rejecting his assumption, the young man reveals that he isn't a sorcerer, but a swordsman. In an instant, he brings his blade to the assassin's neck and deals the final blow. The port town of Thoria is the second town in the kingdom of Nagras. Its current prosperity is thanks to the blessing of the forest, as well as the lively coastal trade. In an inn within the town, a group of adventurers are deep in a serious conversation. The ruthless swordsman from before, Ardis, is with his companions. Recounting the earlier incident with the assassins, he's being questioned about his decision to kill them. Without getting any information, he argues that he did nothing wrong. They were trying to take his life, so it was only fair that he fought to take theirs. Ted, another swordsman from the group, says it would have been easy for him to keep one alive for interrogation. Unbothered, the young man states that it's too much trouble, and that it's simply a matter of cutting down anyone who attacks him. Norris the archer tries to laugh at his merciless remark. Ophelia, the sorcerer, expresses slight discomfort at his choice, knowing he's fully capable of capturing his enemies alive. Seeing how the pursuers knew about his sword magic, the group guesses that they might be related to the military. It must be an act of revenge, as Ardis acted rudely toward the general. The origin of the conflict stems from when he was escorting a merchant out of the town. During the job, they encountered a fight between the military and some bandits. As the bandits were greater in number, the trained soldiers struggled quite a bit. Although they were about to win, some of the foolish bandits saw and approached him, so he had no choice but to lend the soldiers a hand. He easily overpowered them using his sword magic, but it had one small drawback. Seeing his skill with the sword, the general tried to recruit him into the military as a magic teacher. Outright refusing the offer, he asserts that he is in no way obligated to teach the army sorcerers his sword magic. Insulted by the mere mercenary's rejection, the man says that the opportunity isn't something that commoners like him come across so easily. Patronizing him, Ardis instructs him to sign a monthly contract, stating that he'll be paid 500 gold coins per month. Absolutely enraged, the general argues that a common soldier's salary is a single gold coin per month. His men try to calm him down, but he simply calls the boy a fool, adding that he won't get another chance to join the military. Back at the inn, Ardis nonchalantly rests on the table. While he was annoyed by the general's arrogance, it's not like his sword magic can be taught to others anyway. Ophelia tries to reason that he didn't have to refuse in such a rude manner. Shaming a high-ranking officer in front of a large crowd will surely cause some grudges to be formed. Norris, already having accepted the young man's tendency to make enemies, just laughs at the situation. Ted says it's nothing to scoff at, and turns his attention to the troublemaker. While well aware of his monstrous strength, he dissuades Ardis from making so many enemies. Understanding their concerns, he assures them that he won't cause problems for the group, and promises to be on his best behavior when dealing with nobles and the church. Hearing this, the three mercenaries play around, and bet on him, not knowing what it means to be prudent. The forest of Caucasus grows south of Thoria. It's been an invaluable source of fuel, food, and herbs since ancient times, and has been a pillar of support for the town's development. However, the forest is also host to several wild animals, as well as unexplored regions, where powerful monsters dwell. While it's the job of mercenaries to fight, it's not like there's always a battlefield for them to fight on. Treading into a dangerous place like the forest, upon the request of merchants, then becomes an important source of income. For now, the request that their group is on is a simple task of finding a good spot for tree logging. Looking around the area, they see a pretty good spot that's close to the main road. As long as the path is maintained, there shouldn't be any problems for their client. Moreover, the quality of the trees around it is also remarkable, presumably worth an investment. That being said, they spotted several twin-bladed beasts in the vicinity, so there will be a need to clean up the forest first. It'll be quite the task, but it just means more work and income for them, so it's no problem at all. Looking behind him, Ted notices Ardis looking far away, and scolds him for not paying attention. The young man scratches his head and says that his participation is only temporary. They accepted the job as the morning star of the midnight sun, so it has no direct relation to him. Ophelia approaches him. She's asked before, but once more offers him a place in their party, as they've been teaming up quite often anyway. He gives her a vague answer, and she already knows why. Although it's been an entire year, he still hasn't given up on finding his former party members, despite having no leads whatsoever. She approaches him and cautiously suggests that they might not be alive anymore. Unwilling to give up hope, he shouts that it's only been a year, and that he never expected to find them in such a short period anyway. Their conversation is interrupted by a loud cry for help from nearby. Ted rushes to the rescue, despite not knowing anything about the assailants. His teammates try to stop him, but the swordsman has already made it far. Having no choice but to follow, they remind themselves to do something about his meddlesome personality. Ardis simply smiles at his temporary companions and runs toward the commotion as well. Upon reaching the source of the screams, they see a horrific sight. They've arrived too late, and the bandits have already taken out all of their victims. Seeing the uninvited party, the archers shoot their weapons to get rid of the witnesses. Ted and Ophelia block the attacks, and Norris asks Ardis to protect him well. The fight continues, and the barrage is unrelenting, but they're worthless in the face of the skilled swordsman. An arrow flies by, landing far from its target. Norris notches his own arrow and takes a bandit out with a single strike. Taking his place on the front lines, Ted makes sure that Ophelia is safe from harm, and says that she doesn't have to use magic yet. With their numbers whittling down one by one, the leader of the thugs dashes in with his battle axe. Planning to distract the party's swordsman, he commands his men to get rid of the archer and sorcerers. Annoyed, Ardis throws his swords to the sky, reiterating that he isn't a sorcerer. With his command, the blades fall and fly across the battlefield, slicing down the bandits one by one. The leader slams his axe down on Ted's shield. Unaware of the slaughter that took place behind him, he orders his men to take the rest of the party out, and to make sure that Ophelia is captured alive. However, he's shocked to see the gruesome sight at his back. Bloody-stained swords float over his men, who all lay on the ground lifeless. He's the only one left, and before he could even understand what just happened, Ted raised his weapon and brought it down on the horrid old man. With the battle over, they look around and find corpses strewn throughout the area. It seems like the victims were a party escorting a merchant. Having nothing else to do, they decide to take what they can and return to town. Unfortunately, they can't take everything there, as the horse pulling the carriage was killed. Norris calls Ardis over to check inside the merchandise, expecting to find a few gems or bags of spices. However, he finds something more shocking inside. Ardis notices something odd and asks if there's something wrong. As the archer won't answer, he draws the blinds and checks for himself. There, he finds two children in ragged clothes cowering by the corner. Taking a closer look, they realize that the kids' limbs are chained and shackled together. They're brought outside, and the rest of the party looks over them, obviously uncomfortable with what they found. The situation has become complicated, and they aren't sure what to do. Confused, Ardis identifies them as child slaves and suggests that they take them into town for now. Ted tells them to wait for a bit, as he has to think of the right course of action. With a deep sigh, he presses his hand to his temple. Finding object humans was bad enough, but now they have to deal with twins. Oblivious, Ardis asks what an object human is, and he's met with a stunned reaction from the rest of the group. Not knowing if he's being serious, they talk about how his cluelessness exceeds their expectations. The condescending reaction annoys him, so Norris apologizes and kindly offers to explain. In their world, object humans are people that are bought or sold with money. These might include children sold by their parents, sinners, or prisoners of war. Their arms and legs are shackled, and they have no freedom whatsoever. Since they're considered objects, they aren't protected by the law either. Even slaves are better off. They might be one of the lowest class humans, but they're still considered humans and are entitled to their own rights. On the other hand, object humans are strictly seen as objects. For example, if someone kills a slave, then it'd still be considered murder. However, for object humans, their treatment is completely up to their owner. No matter what they do, the law won't judge them. The worst case scenario would be getting killed for entertainment. Some might even get their limbs amputated to get put on as a piece of decoration. If an owner abuses their slaves, then their reputation will worsen. However, abusing human objects is different, as people will simply think that an owner is doing a bad job of managing their products. Just providing them with clothes to wear is already a sign that they're treated better than others. To make things worse, Ted points out that they're twins. Ardis questions this once again. His confusion regarding object humans and taboo children begins to make them curious about his upbringing. Twins are considered taboo children in this world and are said to be disciples of the evil god. They bring harm to the holy goddess, the greatest existence in the world, who is also the one who created the earth. During the previous war in the divine realm, it was the evil god that had a confrontation with the goddess. The only ones to hurt the goddess were the evil army's vanguards, the twin devils. The words ignite something dark in Ardis, as the story seems eerily familiar. Noticing this, Ted tells him not to make such a scary face and recognizes his genuine hatred for the goddess. From the church's point of view, as something that has a connection with the entities that hurt the goddess, twins are born with an unforgivable sin to bear. He looks at Ophelia in disappointment and asks if she believes in such stories. She says that nobody knows if the story is just a myth. However, living in their world as twins is a truly horrifying experience. That is a fact. Night falls, and the party sets up their camp in the woods. Unable to just leave the children behind, they ended up taking the twins along, saving themselves from the bitter taste that would come with abandoning such poor things. If they were normal human objects, then they could have easily been sold in town. However, nobody would buy twins who are often just disposed of at birth. At times, when unable to find a buyer, unsold goods aren't always killed, but things certainly won't end well for them. Ardis tries to get a specific example of what might end up happening to them, but the possibilities are too atrocious, so Ted asks him not to push for an answer. Norris cuts into their conversation and asks if they plan on taking the children along. Frankly speaking, they'll just get in the way of their missions. Just the fact that their children annoys him, but seeing their shackles, he guesses that they probably can't even walk properly. Studying them, Ardis approaches the twins and reaches his hand out to the metal chains. They flinch at his movements. With an otherworldly power, something within him analyzes their binding and gives him the option to release their locks. Surprise, Ophelia tries to stop him, screaming that the shackles of human objects shouldn't be removed haphazardly, as they're all linked together. They're linked in such a way that when one is removed from the bearer, then all the others will burst into flames. Ignoring her warning, Ardis continues with what he's doing. Within a few moments, the bindings come undone and fall to the ground with a loud clang. The others are stunned at what he just did. Defending himself, he says he removed both of them at once, so there should be no problem. The swordsman and archer laugh it off, amused by how there seem to be no rules for him. On the other hand, Ophelia is completely thrown off as a sorcerer. She charges and shakes him by the collar, urgently demanding that he explain himself. He repeats his words earlier, but she insists that there should be no way for him to use multiple spells simultaneously, especially with no incantation at all. Slightly frustrated by the reaction, he questions why incantations are a prerequisite for magic. To him, it would be much more flexible if they didn't use such a roundabout way. Paying no mind to Ophelia's shock and confusion, he states that he will be taking the twins. In return, he gives up his share of the goods from the carriage. While there's no problem with that, the rest of the group is unable to comprehend his decision. There's no benefit to taking in twins he doesn't even know. He won't be able to make money off them, and the town might not even let them in. He remembers Ophelia's words. If they're true, then abandoning the children would be too irresponsible of him. Not comfortable with leaving the children anyway, Ted accepts the young man's proposal. Holding the released shackles, Ardis approaches the twins and promises to never bind them again. The two look at each other in unfamiliar confusion, while he goes off to sleep. Ophelia tries to stop him, wanting to hear more about what he did earlier, but he ignores her as usual. The night passes and a new day comes. From Ardis' perspective, the need to use incantations is a misconception on the sorcerer's part. As an analogy, he questions if a swordsman needs to shout out his attack before slashing his sword or making a feint. She counters, saying magic is completely different from swordsmanship, which relies on physically moving one's body. Unwilling to concede his point, he asks her to explain how her body moves, simply by wanting to make it move. As she's unable to come up with an answer, Ted joins in and says that no one ever questions why their body moves as such. All they can say in return is the fact that it's just how it is. In other words, to Ardis, using magic is as natural as walking and running. Still in disbelief, Ophelia confirms that without being barred by incantations, he can easily cast 4 different spells simultaneously. While she gets the principle of the idea, the reality of doing it is incomprehensible. Laughing at how incredible he is as a person, Norris jokingly says that it would be a waste to let someone so unusual slip from their hands. Ted lightly asks him to join their party once more. As if used to the question, he robotically says that he'll think about it. Regarding the twins behind them, the party decides to keep the matter a secret. After all, they can't have Ardis attracting even more trouble. That being said, people would probably think that they're insane anyway. As they walk forward, the twins follow, trembling, but still holding on to each other tightly. They look much better and normal, since they were given children's wear from the carriage, but the slight outfit change probably won't be enough to convince the town's gatekeepers. Soon after, they finally see Thoria's gate and are relieved to have arrived before nightfall. Upon reaching the gate, the guards almost instantly recognize the twins. Wanting to avoid trouble, the party tries to reason that they're just escorting the children inside. Unfortunately, they don't buy it and turn them away for bringing evil entities. Well aware of how things get done, Norris approaches the soldier and slips him a coin for his troubles. Convinced by the bribe, he lets the party in, reminding them not to cause any trouble. After crossing the gate, the archer calls out to Ardis and opens his palm with a smile. Understanding what he meant, the young man fishes out a coin from his pocket and repays his companion. Such situations will be common when walking around with the twins. Protesting will only cause a commotion, and he'll end up with even more enemies. Although that, in itself, would be an amusing sight to see. Ardis thanks him for the advice and apologizes for the trouble. Ted waves it off and says that they'll be off to report their findings. Ophelia still has a lot she wants to say, but kindly offers her help if there's anything he needs a woman's help with. With this, the group finally goes their separate ways. Left with the twins, Ardis plans to head back to his usual inn, hoping that they have enough rooms to shelter the kids. Suddenly, the people around them take notice and point out the twins' presence. Throughout the day, they encounter several harsh words and actions. He didn't expect the discrimination to be this bad. They arrive at the inn he frequents, but they're immediately turned away. While he's confused at the innkeeper's hostile behavior, she's equally confused and asks if he suddenly built a deep grudge against her. Unwilling to take the money, she gives him the option of getting rid of the kids or leaving with his belongings. Without room for discussion, he packs up and looks for a place to stay. However, things were the same wherever he went. The people's hatred towards the twins was more intense than he had imagined. The children pant behind him, obviously exhausted from the constant walking. While he's trying to think of what to do, a bright lady calls his attention and asks if he's looking for a place to stay. She offers him a bed at their inn. While he'd be happy to accept, he confirms if she'll take in the twins as well. About to insist that children are no problem, she gradually realizes the situation, and silence takes over the conversation. A while later, Ardis enters the inn's room with plates of food. He sighs, glad to finally have a meal after the long day. The deal with the innkeeper ripped him off big time, but she doesn't seem to be a bad person. She felt bad for the kids, but as she's running a business, it took a bit more money to get them a room. Placing the plates on the table, he calls the children over to eat before the food gets cold. As he's wolfing down on his plate, he notices the twins who are still frozen in the corner of the room. Unable to force them to eat, Ardis finishes his own meal and goes off to sleep. Morning comes and the sunshine wakes him up from his deep sleep. Sitting up, he finds the children, still in the corner of the room. He wonders if they fell asleep without eating, but thankfully sees the empty plate on the table. Given the clean tableware, they must have been starving. Looking over the sleeping pair, he guesses that they must have trouble eating properly when people are looking. Always shivering and sticking together, they must have had a terrible life so far, all because they were born as twins. Covering them with a warm blanket, he vows to protect them from that moment on. By the time they became self-aware, they were already together, looking at the same scenery and eating the same food. They spent time together, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. They only began to realize that they weren't normal after they disobeyed their mother's instruction and snuck out to play. Outside the safety of their home, they were met with ruthless judgment from the townspeople. After almost getting stoned to death, they returned to their parents, bloodied and beaten. That was the moment when they learned about their existence as twins. Moreover, the incident also taught them that their very existence was treated like a disease. Seeing their confused and wounded condition, the twins' parents break down. They had expected to be scolded for sneaking out to play. Instead, they were hugged tightly by their crying mother, who was repeatedly apologizing for what they went through. Since they didn't want to make their mother sad, and as their only memory of the outside world was a scary one, they never went out again. Their peaceful life with their poor, but loving parents continued on for a while. However, it quickly fell apart when a beast that attacked the village ended up killing their father. Forced to feed her children alone, their mother was desperate to support her family. She soon fell ill after overworking herself and died half a year later. This series of events marked the beginning of the twins' painful days. Still crying over the loss of their parents, the siblings were harshly dragged out of their home. The villagers threw them into a tight storage cabin and were forced to stay inside until they found a buyer for them. Calling them servants of the evil god, they locked the twins inside, trembling in the dark. Half a month later, they were taken out of the old shed and shoved into a luggage carriage after having shackles put on their limbs. Before they were taken away, the image of the villagers looking at them with disgust was burned deep into their memory. They spent days locked in the shaking carriage. Whenever they reached a town, they would be handed over to a new person. While the person in charge changed, their treatment towards the twins stayed the same. They were covered with a plain piece of cloth and fed with pieces of disgusting hard bread. One time, they were caught eating a few apples in the carriage and were immediately subjected to physical abuse. They were smacked, stomped on, and beaten quite regularly. All the while, they kept on wondering why they were being treated that way. The young twins couldn't comprehend the reason, as they lacked the knowledge behind the townspeople's actions. All they understood was that they were servants of the evil god, that they wouldn't get hit by the adults if they remained obedient, and that they'd always be given food, no matter how little. They wanted to go home every day, but such a place no longer existed. They wanted to see their parents, but they're no longer there. If they cry, the adults will get angry, and if they talk back, they'll get hit. The only way to stay safe was to keep their mouths shut. While clinging on to the last piece of warmth left, they vowed to stop themselves from crying and suppress their emotions. Such was their life. Then, a sudden change occurred. Drawing the curtains of the carriage back, a savior in the form of a black-haired boy appeared before the twins. At first, they thought that their tormentor had just changed again, but it was different that time. For some reason, his eyes reminded them of their parents, and it was only later on that they realized the reason. Like their mother and father, the boy didn't despise them, not one bit. He removed their shackles, carried them on his back when they got tired, and gave them much more food than they could ever imagine. The twins had no idea what to do. While he told them to eat their meal, they were frozen from the fear that they might still get hit if they dared to touch the food. Looking at him, he always had a troubled look on his face, though they didn't know the reason. When he went to bed without cleaning the table, they devoured the food on their plate. That day, they were finally able to sleep comfortably, after having been relieved from the torment of hunger. The entire experience felt completely unfamiliar to them. That was the beginning of the curious lives of the boy and his twins. Ardis goes out in the morning and returns when night falls. While he tells the siblings to sit with him and eat, they're still too afraid to move in his presence. Although they're nervous, living in a warm room where they get to eat their fill without being met with abuse was like a dream come true. The only time they're afraid is when they have to leave their sleeping quarters to go to the restroom. One day, while sneaking out to relieve themselves, a couple of customers quickly identified them as twins. The boy had clearly told them to avoid being seen together. However, for the twins, they were each other's only remaining family. As such, even if it's just for a moment, the thought of being separated was simply unimaginable. After a day of working as a mercenary, Ardis returns to their room as usual, carrying their tray of food. Upon entering, he sees the twins back in their corner, still refusing to move. Unwilling to give in, he lets out a deep sigh and calmly walks toward them. He sets the tray down on the floor, right in front of the children, then dips a piece of bread in sauce. Wanting to make sure they're fed, he gently moves it towards one of the kids and tells her to open her mouth. She hesitates for a moment, still filled with caution. However, the young man's kind eyes convince her, and she opens her mouth just a tiny bit. Seeing the opportunity, he feeds her the piece and leaves the young girl to eat by herself. He then moves on to the other sibling and feeds her all the same. Moving forward, he patiently feeds both of them some stew, slowly spoon-feeding them their dinner. There's a lot more left, so he tells them that there's no need to rush. Suddenly, he notices something wrong. Their eyes tear up from the unfamiliar warmth, but he innocently misinterprets it as the food being too hot. Following this, the twins were finally comfortable enough to have their meals with a kind boy. That being said, they're still trying to figure out just who he is in their lives. During their meal, he realizes that they haven't even told him their names. They think for a moment and share that they're called Philia and Rihanna. After half a month, Ardis had decided to leave the inn they were staying in. The pair actually saw him having a serious conversation with the bright innkeeper. While it was probably because they were seen, the young man doesn't mention it and simply shares that he had rented a house where all three of them could stay in. Following a rather short journey, they reach their new home. It's a new place where they can run around and play without fear of being seen. Their faces don't show it, but the freedom makes the twins happy. The safety and comfort offered by their home allowed the children to become less wary. While they still aren't able to hold normal conversations, the trio was able to establish a simple form of communication. Suddenly, a problem arose. Upon returning home from an errand, Ardis finds Rihanna unconscious on the floor, with Philia worriedly crying over her. After studying the situation properly, he carries her to the bed and allows the child to rest. She has a terrible fever and is burning up. He hopes it's nothing serious, as he can't depend on the church's healers. Furthermore, the Morningstar party is away on a mission, and he's never taken care of a sick person before. Hearing this, Philia grabs onto his robe and cries out for help, as she doesn't want her sister to die. Surprised, he calms her down, assuring her that it'll be fine. Remembering the way to nurse a feverish person, he thinks about Norris, who said that the head should be cooled, while the body should be kept warm. Trying out the method, he covers her body with a thick blanket and places a wet cloth on her forehead. To ensure her recovery, he tries to feed her medicine little by little. Looking over at him in confusion, Philia wonders why he's going so far for them. Noticing her expression, he asks if something is wrong. With a pitiful look on her face, she questions his kindness and asks why he's so nice to them, even though they're servants of the evil god. Remembering everyone else's words, she shares that they've been addressed and treated just like they're the enemies of God. Most believe that they would get cursed if they showed them even just a tiny bit of kindness. She asks her question again, trembling and afraid to hear the answer. Ardis looks at her intently, saying that he knows they are not servants of the evil god. On a bended knee, he tells her that everyone is being deceived by the goddess. He reiterates that, despite being twins, they are just normal humans, just like everyone else. Ardis then asks about their mother, who is kind to them. He assures Philia that her parents knew that they were not the servants of evil but their own beloved children. Hearing this, Philia remembers the way her mother is always crying while hugging them, feeling bad for the persecution they are experiencing. Ardis tells her that he knows too that they are normal and kind children, so from now on, he will protect them. They don't have to call themselves servants of evil because they have done nothing wrong. Hearing his assurance, Philia and Rihanna cry from happiness and relief. After that, Rihanna's fever came down the next day, and it turned out to be just a normal fever. However, the next day, Philia also got a fever. Through it all, Ardis remains by their side until they're fully recovered. At that moment, the twins were able to sleep peacefully for the first time again. Meanwhile, on the barren main road of Thoria, a woman appears. She has a hunch that she will find here the person she has been looking for a long time. At the lodging in the forest, Ardis enters the house and immediately feels a tug. He is then greeted by the twins. Feeling comfortable with him, the twins become more vocal and communicate that they are hungry. Ardis goes straight to the kitchen, telling the children he will prepare the food right away. The twins follow him, sitting right against his legs while he peels their fruit. At night, Ardis reads them stories as they lie in bed. Soon, the twins fall asleep, prompting Ardis to leave the room. However, moments later, he still ended up sleeping beside them, ultimately winning the trust of the twins. The next day, Ardis goes home with skewers and is excitedly welcomed by the girls. They immediately dig in the food, munching on the skewers. Ardis is glad to see them eat enthusiastically, and the girls express their gratitude to him. It feels like it has been forever since Ardis has experienced peace. Later, Ted, in his threatening look, asks Ardis when he is coming back to work. Ardis asks him not to get any closer, and to scare the children with his face. Ted retaliates that Ardis has been refusing all of their invitations to work, and he thinks that it is time for him to start earning again. Seeing him with the twins, Ophelia comments that they seem to get along really well. She was worried at first about how their cohabitation would work out, but it seems to be going well. Hearing this, Norris convinces Ardis to work again, saying he has a piece of information he might be interested in. He then asks if Ardis has ever heard about the beauty who appears on the main road. The swordsman is confused, hearing the news for the first time. Norris further explains that there is a rumor spreading around Thoria. In half a day, after taking the main road to the capital, you will meet a young woman standing in the middle of it all alone. It is rumored that she has challenged every mercenary that has passed by and defeated them all. Ardis asks if she is a bandit, but Norris says it is unlikely since none of the mercenaries were robbed, injured, or dead. If they refuse the challenge, the woman will let them pass through without any fuss. The woman looks strong, but she is a harmless weirdo. Apart from a few people, no one really finds her a problem. However, Ardis is confused, asking why it seems to still be a problem. Norris tells him that because of people's pride being trumped by the weird woman, a lot are also complaining, so their client is the Lord of Thoria. Ted interjects, asking if the woman is making a name for herself. Ophelia replies that it seems not to be the case because the woman doesn't give her name or reason to anyone. Hearing all of these, Ardis asks what the Lord's request is. Norris answers that all he wants is a negotiation. They want to invite the woman to the Lord's mansion. The swordsman questions the need of the Lord for mercenaries, when he can easily order his subordinates. The archer speculates that the Lord is simply against the idea of sending his own men, or maybe he was refused already. He then adds that the reward is 2 gold coins. Ardis reacts that it is too cheap for 4 people, but Norris informs him that they are handling another request. They specifically keep the quest for him since it suits him. Hearing their discussion, the twins are alarmed, asking if Ardis is leaving. Ardis confirms this and, on his bended knee, tells them to wait for him inside the house. Worried, the twins ask if he will take them with him, but he refuses. He promises that he will come back, and so they have to be good girls and wait for him. After bidding them goodbyes, Ardis takes his leave and runs through the forest in full speed. He zooms through the thick forest, thinking that it would take him at least 2 hours to arrive at his destination. Annoyed that he has to pretend to run, he contemplates flying through the sky to make it easier for him, but deems it can cause a commotion if he is seen. Since flying magic and chantless magic are not common in his current world, he has to be careful. Meanwhile, on the main road, a man falls to the ground. The mercenaries are all in disbelief, saying that the man is the 10th person the woman took down. Just then, Ardis arrives, seeing the mercenaries flock together while watching the scene unfold. The woman faces the mercenaries, stating that she downed another one of them who couldn't even last for 10 seconds. She smirks at them, asking them who is brave enough to attack her, taunting that she wouldn't mind even if they came at her all at once. Just then, a massive guy with a halberd as a weapon comes forward, volunteering to go next. The man recognizes her strength, but states that he has been wielding weapons since before she was born, so there is definitely a big gap in their experience. The woman considers what he said to be interesting. The man suddenly attacks, pointing his weapon at the woman. However, she evades with a snap, landing on top of his spear. She then points her sword at his neck, declaring that it is game over for him. Meanwhile, the onlookers are shocked that their strongest mercenary is defeated. They are in disbelief and state that the woman must really be strong. Watching from the sidelines, Ardis is also surprised to witness the woman's strength. He notices that she is trying to be casual, but her speed is not for ordinary people. Bored, the woman asks the crowd who her next contender is. The onlookers panic about who to send next. However, Ardis passed through the crowd nonchalantly to approach the woman. The mercenaries tried to stop him, saying it was dangerous for a kid, but he didn't stop. The woman smiles when she sees him approaching, noting that someone with potential has finally appeared. However, Ardis states that he doesn't plan on fighting and only approaches her to negotiate. The woman is obviously disappointed. Ardis explains that he is there on behalf of the Lord of Thoria. Just then, a dagger comes flying towards him. Although surprised, Ardis is able to deflect it easily using his magic barrier. Annoyed by her sudden action, he tells her to listen to what he has to say first. He points out that aiming for the throat of someone who only wants to negotiate is reckless and rude. Indifferent, the woman tells him that she has no interest in listening to what he has to say. This, of course, means that he has to convince her to listen, but there is only one way to make her do it. The woman then suddenly charges toward Ardis, saying that he has to defeat her first to make her obey him and listen. As a defense, Ardis summons a wall of rocks before him. However, the woman easily breaks through the rocks and uses them to attack, hurling dozens of rocks toward the swordsman. Ardis is shocked by her power and immediately casts a magic barrier to protect himself. Just then, a ball of fire plummets in his direction. He barely evades it as the woman swiftly appears behind him for another attack. She tries to slash him with her sword, but luckily he is able to dodge just in time. The woman states that Ardis is a competent warrior. Thrilled, she goes all out, casting a powerful attack towards Ardis. Seeing a ball of light plummeting toward him, he casts another barrier, which effectively deflects the magic. Thrilled by his ability, the woman asks for his identity, but Ardis refuses to answer and asks for hers instead. Meanwhile, the onlookers are in uproar. They are wondering how a sorceress was able to defeat them using a dagger, and they are also wondering about the boy who is keeping up with her. Back on the battlefield, Ardis gives the woman a scrutinizing look, as this is the first time he meets someone who can use magic without chance like him. He wonders, who is she? Ardis and the female warrior are still engaged in a fierce fight. The woman attacks again, hurling rocks towards Ardis. As defense, the swordsman chants a fire magic used by his enemy before and casts it on the woman. The female warrior is confused as to why Ardis is holding back, going so far as to imitate another magic. She then looks at the group of spectators and figures that they are the reason why. Knowing this, she tries to get rid of the hindrance. She projects magic past Ardis, attacking the onlookers. The onlookers are all overwhelmed and confused about how the attacks reach their way, deeming it dangerous. Seeing them not shaken enough, the woman launches a bigger attack, making the onlookers flee immediately. Ardis creates a pointed magical barrier, protecting the fleeing spectators and successfully neutralizing the attack. With the onlookers gone, the woman tells Ardis that he can now go all out. Still trying to negotiate, Ardis asks the woman if she still won't listen to what he has to say. The female warrior raises her voice, stating that the swordsman is still spouting nonsense, adding that if he wants her to listen, he has to force it. With no other way, Ardis draws out his swords. Seeing his combat style, the woman is pumped up and looking forward to the fight. Ardis declares that he will give her what she wants, while pointing swords at her. He will not hold back anymore, so she better brace herself. The swords plunge towards the woman, who tries to neutralize the attack. She activates a barrier to block off the swords, but more of them attack her, so she evades them by dancing up in the air. In retaliation, she creates an explosion which makes the swords fly in different directions. She flies higher, casting another spell of offense. Ardis casts the same magic and hurls it towards the woman at the same time. Their attack makes a powerful explosion, which can be seen from afar by the onlookers. The explosion creates a crater and thick smoke, which makes the woman cough. As the dust thins out, she gets a surprise attack from Ardis. He thrusts his sword towards her, which she promptly deflects. The two engage in close combat, fighting each other with their swords. Ardis obviously has an advantage using a sword, and the woman notices this, asking if he is a swordsman. Ardis confirms this, swinging expertly against the woman. With one final swing, he is able to disarm the woman, making her sword fly out in the air. He points his sword at her, completely neutralizing her. While restraining her, Ardis asks her if she is finally satisfied after he defeated her. The woman seems shocked for a while after being defeated, but suddenly she smiles and calls Ardis her lord. Ardis is confused to hear this, asking the woman what she is up to. Meanwhile, the twins are walking outside the house. They talk in a low, hushed voice, wondering if Ardis would be angry at them. The good treatment they get from Ardis makes them less cautious, letting their curiosity win. With their hoodies down, the twins tour the town and are amazed to see so many people and large houses. Full of excitement, Philia can't keep up with Rihanna and runs toward her sister. However, she trips and falls to the ground. Just then, a voice asks if she is alright. She is then helped by an elderly man, who states that she is admirable for not crying after falling. He laughs, saying that being young is a good thing. Suddenly fond of them, the elderly ask which one of them is the eldest, noting that they look alike, and that they will surely grow up to be real beauties. However, he suddenly realizes that they really look too much. With a horrified look on his face, he asks if they are twins. The twins are alarmed, while the elderly man starts to look around. He sighs and stares at the girls with a pained look, saying that life must be hard on them. He then fixes their hoods, urging them to go home immediately and reminding them to never let anyone see their identical faces. The twins look back at the man, as it was the first time someone showed them kindness other than Ardis. Back on the main road, the woman admits to Ardis that she didn't think he was strong enough. She adds that waiting on that long road has finally paid off. Ardis is still confused, asking who she called Lord. The woman tells him that it was him. She was seeking the limit of the potential of humanity and the future that lies ahead. She adds that because she defeated her, she plans on making him her master and serving him. Ardis looks at her in disbelief, not wanting to get involved with a weird woman. However, he is curious about her identity and asks for her name. He states that her power is similar to his and asks her cryptically if they are same. The woman smirks, saying she doesn't understand the meaning of his questions. Ardis calls this a bluff, accusing her of not wanting to answer his questions. The woman reiterates that she is his faithful servant and will always answer her master's requests. She bows lightly to him, as Ardis feels like he has gotten himself into something troublesome again. After their fight, Ardis tells the woman his reason for finding her. He informs her that the Lord of Thoria is requesting her presence because he has something to discuss with her. He then asks her if she is willing to go with him to the mansion. The woman replies that if it is a command from him, then she will comply. Ardis doesn't answer right away and contemplates that there are things he wants to ask her, but the request from the Lord must come first. Seeing the mess she made, the woman tells him that she must first clean up the disastrous scene she has caused. She then uses magic to lift up the rocks and pile them up again in the crater formed by her explosion. Witnessing her magic once more, Ardis reminds himself that he shouldn't let his guard down around the female warrior, since she can also cast magic without incantation like him. The woman announces that she is done cleaning up and ready to go. At Thoria's Lord Mansion, the two are stopped by the residence guard. He inquires if the woman is the one they are looking for, and he immediately confirms this after looking at the description. He offers to lead the way, but tells Ardis that he doesn't need to come along while giving him his reward. The woman is confused about being left alone, so Ardis explains that his job is only leading her to the mansion. The woman is in disbelief, not seeing the reason why she would stay in the place without her master. She then declares that she is not going and starts to leave. However, Ardis stops her. The woman looks at him and asks if it is an order from him, and if so, she will follow. Ardis is taken aback for a while, and then there's a silence between them. The swordsman is puzzled by the woman's intention. However, he realizes that he needs to give her a command for her to listen. With no other choice, he sighs and gives her a command to go meet the Lord. She is initially shocked to hear his order, but then she smiles and heeds his request. After that, he watches as the woman willingly enters the mansion. Later, while walking in the town, Ardis contemplates that he had not met anyone who could fight equally with him until now. The world is really vast, and there might be others who are stronger than him that he hasn't met yet. No matter how strong he is, if it is his time, he will die. However, right now, there are people who rely on him, so he can't die yet. Ardis then opens the door of his house, and is immediately greeted by the twins. He happily smiles at them as they share that they made lunch. The twins then show him the sandwiches they made, and even tell him that they made some for him. Ardis smiles at them, saying that they should eat it when it is lunchtime. He might be a bit early, but he also needs to prepare lunch for them. Just then, they hear a knock at the door. Ardis immediately tells the twins to hide as he answers the door. Upon opening the door, Ardis is shocked to see the woman standing outside. He then asks what she is doing at his house. She replies that she has come to report that she has fulfilled his orders. Ardis seems confused at first, but the woman clarifies that she has come back from Thoria's Lord's mansion. Ardis tells her she did well and then dismisses her. As he tries to close the door, the woman puts herself between them and asks if there are any orders from him. The swordsman tells her no, but she insists on protecting him by being by his side. He is in disbelief, thinking that she's trying to coax him into paying for her rent at an inn. Wanting to get rid of her, he offers to pay her rent for a night. The woman assures him that she is not sure on money. She just wants to stay by his side in case of an emergency. Annoyed by her persistence, Ardis closes the door on her face, saying that he will not let her in. The woman relents, stating that she will just stay outside to stand guard. From his window, she watches her retreating back, still trying to figure her out. Later that day, he learned that the woman was rude to the Lord, and she refused the challenges from the soldiers who wanted to test her strength. Ultimately, she humiliated the Lord for declining to be his personal guard. Her actions caused them to hold a grudge, and this would be the primary cause of the unexpected situation that would unfold later. The next morning, Ardis greeted the sleepy twins and told them to get ready for breakfast. Philia eats her soup enthusiastically, causing her to burn her mouth. Ardis reminds her to take her time eating since she is sensitive to heat. Meanwhile, Rihanna eats her meal quietly, which reminds Ardis of a squirrel. Rihanna requests another bowl of food, and Ardis immediately gets her plate. He contemplates that his life has been peaceful lately, if not for the woman. He peeks through his window and sees her standing in her usual place, guarding him. The twins ask him if the white-haired woman is still outside, and he confirms, reminding them that she must not see them. Ardis looks back at the woman again, thinking about how she has been standing guard at his gate. He assumed that leaving the twins would be difficult because of her presence, but luckily, she follows him wherever he goes. The woman supported him during his hunts and quests. The hunts they work on together are very efficient. She has been a great help to him, so a sense of trust was somewhat established. After all, although she is still a stranger to him as a mercenary, she is very reliable. However, he wonders, is it really okay to trust her? Later, rain starts pouring into the forest. Ardis notices the twins looking outside the window and reminds them not to get close to it. With a worried look on their faces, they tell Ardis that the woman outside is soaking wet. The swordsman looks through the window too, and he sees the woman standing still under the rain. The twins innocently ask Ardis if the woman doesn't have a home or a bed. Looking at her soaking body, Ardis questions why the woman is still not staying at an inn, despite the rain. He then suddenly feels a tug, and he sees the twins behind him holding a towel. They said that the woman must be cold, and it must be hard for her not to have a home. Ardis looks at the girls, who definitely understand the feeling of someone without a shelter. He assures them that he understands their intentions, and tells them to stay in their room until he says it is safe to go out. Ardis then goes outside and shouts for the woman. The woman greets him as he approaches her under the rain. He tells her to stay at an inn during the rainy days. Otherwise, it will look like he is a ruthless person. The woman insists that she is fine and he doesn't have to mind her. However, Ardis can tell that she is cold and tells her to come and take shelter. He then gives her a towel, which she accepts, thanking him for his consideration. The woman dries herself using the towel. She then looks at Ardis, requesting that he extend her gratitude to the twins inside as well. Hearing this, Ardis becomes threatened, demanding to know how she knows about them. The woman remains calm, and he explains that it is easy to notice since he is wary of her. Enraged, Ardis demands to know how she knows about the twins. She tells him that she can sense their magical power, and their power has the same shape and color, so it only means that they are twins. Ardis weighs this over. He knows nothing about the woman's identity or purpose, but at least she remains devoted to him. In this case, he contemplates whether it is okay to reveal the twins' identities. He sighs, thinking that the woman already knows about them anyway. With determination, Ardis asks the woman what she thinks about the existence of the goddess. The woman seems surprised by this abrupt question, but answers that she didn't really think of her since the goddess doesn't exist anyway. Ardis is shocked to hear that she doesn't believe that the goddess exists. She believes that the creator isn't just limited to the goddess. The same is true of other deities. She believes that there isn't a god in the sky, the sea, or the earth. She is convinced that God exists in a faraway place, somewhere a human cannot touch. Ardis is amazed by her statement, as the world they are in believes in the goddess and her apostles. However, if she is right, then what about the goddess that the church devotes to? The woman is not sure either, as she doesn't think of the people she hasn't met yet. She adds that the goddess hates twins. However, 1 in 100 babies will turn out to be twins, regardless of whether there is a goddess or not. That is a natural occurrence and cannot be helped. Hating innocent people because they happen to be twins is very childish. After her statement, the woman smiles at Ardis, assuring him that she won't tell anyone about the twins he is keeping. She promises that she will do her best to protect the twins since they are important to him. In silence, the two look at each other, trying to figure each other out. Ardis breaks the silence and, in a serious look, asks the woman if she swears to uphold her words. The woman promises to stand by her words, her parents' name, and her mission. Ardis states that what she said doesn't make as much sense as usual, but he will choose to believe the oath she swore to uphold. In the end, Ardis lets the woman into the house, and she meets the twins, thinking he has gained a powerful but mysterious ally. The woman proudly introduces herself to the twins as Ardis' servant. She expresses her gratitude to the girls, who showed their kindness when they sent her a towel. The twins didn't reply, still gauging her presence. The woman assures them that she will just wait until they get used to her. Ardis introduces the twins one by one. He then realizes that he still doesn't know the woman's name. The woman tells him that she doesn't have a name and gives him permission to call her in any way he wants. Ardis is confused about her identity and asks for her name again. However, the woman insists that he can continue to call her you because of what he has been doing. Weirded out, Ardis refused to call her just any name. Meanwhile, the twins are also confused with the woman's name. Since the woman doesn't have a name, the twins discuss the fact that she is nameless. However, they keep on circling back on the same topic, calling her Miss Nameless because she has no name, But then again, Miss Nameless is a name. Ardis stops the twins from discussing. He then tries to think of the right name for the woman from the word nameless. After a while, he decides to call her Nail and asks if she is fine with it. The woman agrees and declares that from now on, she will be known as Nail. She tells everyone that she will be under their care from now on. Later, Ardis meets with his mercenary colleague. The swordsman shares with them how he dealt with Nail. Norris states that it is weird that she doesn't have an identity. Ardis thinks so too, but Nail doesn't have any prejudice against the twins, which is good. He is fine with anything as long as she won't put the twins in danger. He adds that there are also many mercenaries with hidden identities, so it is not new. Norris interjects, saying that Ardis is a prime example of this. Ophelia also interjects, saying that letting Nail stay in Ardis' house is somewhat careless. Ardis contemplates, remembering how Nail denies the existence of the goddess. It was so shocking that he was convinced on the spot that Nail was different. Ted tells him that if he is okay staying with Nail, then it is fine. He then asks him if he has already heard the latest rumors. Ardis verifies if this is about the grinder coming from the mountain, and Ted affirms. The grinder is a monster that lives in the Cannabis mountain range. It has the shape of a bird but has buffalo-like horns on its legs and 4 horse-like legs with massive claws. It has a strength that is comparable to that of beasts found in the Thoria Plains and is feared by adventurers. Ardis states that he has never heard such a monster come down to the plains before. Norris reveals that lately, the number of monsters and carnivores around Thoria has dropped significantly. Instead, the number of herbivores has increased. This leads to the Thoria Plains becoming an attractive ground for grinders. Ted interjects into the conversation, saying he remembers a certain someone who shares that his hunts have been efficient after teaming up with a strong woman. Ardis is confused, asking if they are implying that it is his fault that the grinders are on the loose, which Norris confirms immediately. Ted adds that even if the monsters are low-ranked, they still balance the ecosystem, so one shouldn't go around hunting them to extinction. Ardis laughs at this, but Norris tells him that changing the ecosystem is no laughing matter. Displeased, Ophelia thanks Ardis because, so far, every day has been nerve-wracking for them. Sensing the severity of the situation, Ardis apologizes. Ted informs him that the military will form a subjugation team to take care of the grinders. They have requested help from mercenaries, including their team. He adds that since it is a dangerous monster, he would love to refuse. However, refusing a personal request from the Lord would be quite bad. So getting help from Ardis would be beneficial, since he is capable of driving the monsters to extinction. Feeling guilty and pressured, Ardis caves in and decides to join the party. After 2 days of preparation, the team formed to subjugate the grinder left the Thoria. Meanwhile, on the plains of Thoria, military units are being dispatched. Among these men is Captain Drews, who spots a fellow captain named Deccan. He tells Deccan that it is an honor to fight along with him. Deccan acknowledges his presence, saying that this will be their first battle together. Drews replies that it is reassuring to know that he will fight alongside Thoria's greatest swordsman. He adds that the monster will stand no chance against 38 military units, to which Deccan agrees. Drews also informs him that 9 mercenary units have joined the subjugation to assist them. The general must be overly cautious to hire mercenaries in their mission to fight the monsters. However, Deccan believes that they don't need the help of mercenaries because they can do the mission on their own. Hearing bitterness in his words, Drews wonders what happened to the captain. Meanwhile, Deccan remembers the events that took place when Nail visited the Lord's mansion. The general commanded that Deccan fight against a female mercenary. He was told that there was a female mercenary who was being quite arrogant. Because of this, he should put her in place. Deccan unsheathes his sword, stating that he won't take Nail's life, but he can't promise that she will come out unscathed. Nail asks if she is allowed to use a real sword, and Deccan confirms this, saying he is not that shameful to fight an unarmed woman. Nail brings out her dagger as Deccan charges towards her. However, in just a snap, his sword comes flying out of his grasp. The captain is shocked, as are the general and lord of Thoria. Nail points her sword at his throat, declaring that she has defeated him. After that, Deccan suffered great humiliation, as he was defeated while the general and the lord were watching. To make matters worse, it was with a woman, and all it took was one strike. Since then, the other military men talk behind his back, saying that he is all talk, and that his ruse of being the strongest swordsman is all fake. After the humiliation he received, he swears that he will rack up achievements during the subjugation mission to bring his honor back.